Let's cover off a little tool, folks, in Terraform that's very useful on occasions where you need to test a resource that's outside of your existing Terraform configuration. And this tool is Terraform import, folks. What that allows you to do is if you create a resource in the portal by using ClickOps and you then want to use it after you've tested it and it's what you need it to do, then you can use this here to import it into your Terraform, folks, your state, as we say, to manage your configuration so that it will be part of that configuration going forward and it won't throw you any errors or won't get inadvertently destroyed. Now, you may be required, folks, to use Terraform import on other occasions. There may be cases where another user has created a resource manually as well via ClickOps. Somebody might have changed a resource manually via ClickOps that's currently managed by the Terraform state, and in that case it'll throw you an error, which we will see in a minute, and tell you that you need to import this into your configuration. And I'm sure there's a lot of other ways to do it, folks, than what I'm going to show you today, but by all means, like I say, share those in the comments or drop any questions in if you're not sure what I'm talking about, but I'm going to cover it off on a basic level. And just to talk about what I'm going to show you today, folks, I'm going to do it in the context of network security groups, and this is using Azure. It's pretty much exactly the same as what you will do in AWS, just it's AWS resources, and talking about the import context in the Terraform documentation, it sometimes does lean towards the AWS provider, folks, okay? And like I said, they're very similar. But what we're looking at here is some network security groups, folks. These 4 or 5 here are all managed by my Terraform state currently, and I've manually created this one called test. All right. Now, in my code, what I've got here, folks, is I've got a resource block here in my YAML. If you remember back to my previous video, folks, where I was talking about dynamic blocks in the context of network security groups, this is a new network security group. It hasn't got any rules. It'll just get past the Azure defaults, and it's called test, which we seen there was the name of this one, folks, as well. So what we're going to get here is a conflict, and Terraform is going to tell us that we need to import this if we want to manage it using the actual Terraform configuration. And how we can do that there is we can use the VS Code bash command line, folks. And what we're looking at here is a couple of examples I've commented them out here. Just ignore this one here. This was just if I wanted to use another module. I've just got that little placeholder there and I wanted to call it. But anyway, we're here for the Terraform import. So we can use the command line here using this bottom command, folks. And I'll just copy that in. So I will copy that and stick it in. I'll just trim that hashtag off the end of it. And what I'll tell you, folks, as well is this is where Terraform documentation comes in useful as well. And right at the bottom of every Terraform resource that it talks about for whichever provider you're using, folks, it gives you the actual command you need to use to import the actual resource in. So it's giving you Terraform import, then the resource, and then the resource ID, like it says in this case. Terraform security groups can be imported using the resource ID. This is the resource ID here, folks. Now there's a little nuance I'll show you here that I found that running this needed a slight change. So it did. And really quickly, I will share the documentation, folks, again for this Terraform, but this one's pretty self-explanatory. The import block, it's always at the bottom of the page here. Okay, so if we come back to here, folks, and on this Terraform import block on the command line, what you will see here is because I'm using dynamic blocks, I'm having to actually escape these double quotes, folks, because it threw me an error with regards to actually saying this wasn't a string, and I then had to put those in. The other thing you will see is I've trimmed off the leading / as well before subscriptions. And in the actual console, if I look at this here, test network security group, and into the JSON view, and here's the resource ID we need to copy, folks. It actually comes with the / so that just needed trimmed off it. All right, because it will throw an error, and I had to do a little bit of digging, which is always good, folks. You know, when you have to do your own research and try and find out the reason why things aren't working, it's always good to know. And you learn a little bit as well once it fails. All right, so this one will work. All right, but I want to show you first what sort of error you're going to see, folks, like I was talking about. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just run Terraform apply -auto -approve. That will save me typing in yes after I see the plan output. What I would say is, folks, you don't see the error telling you to import the resource until Terraform apply has been ran. It won't show you this Terraform import error on the plan output. It'll show you it on the apply when it tries to create the resource. So we'll see that in action now. I'll just blow this up a bit so we can see. I'm also logged into my Azure Portal, folks, using AZ login. So make sure you're logged in, okay? And I'm also running these commands from the parent directory in my code. And if you have been following along with my previous videos, you will know the template layout by now. But as always, if you have any questions, please ask. So we can see the plan output. It's trying to create the test, or it says it's going to add the test named network security group. Now it's going through and it sees that there isn't managed by the Terraform configuration. It's telling me that it already exists, and to be managed via Terraform, this resource needs to be imported into the state. And it says, please see the resource documentation, which we've already looked at for the network security group. Okay, and we've just basically copied the command line command, folks. So that is the command we need. Slightly different, like I said, I've had to, in this case, use test the name inside the square brackets, folks, because we're using a dynamic block here. And if we remember back, the dynamic block there, it's looking for each security rule name, and in this case it's test, so we want to target that one. So let's run this here command, folks, and see this Terraform resource being imported. You can see it's as quick as that, folks. That has imported the resource successfully as per what's been output in the console here. And if we work with our Terraform configuration going forward, we now know that this test network security group is managed by the actual configuration, and we can test that out, folks. This resource, again, just to reiterate, was manually created, so I could manually delete it. I still can manually delete it, but now I can actually delete it via the Terraform configuration as well. So if we look in here and we just drop this down, we come to this little test block. If we just comment this out, folks, and we just run the Terraform apply -auto -approve, and this will delete that resource, folks, because it doesn't see it in the actual configuration here, and that will also then be deleted in the portal. We just give that a second to grab the state file, and it's saying it's going to be destroyed. And that's it, destroyed, folks. And if we go to the portal, we just close this down and just hit refresh, the test network security group has gone. Just as another example as well, folks, if you wanted to add, like in this case, a new rule onto, an existing network security group. In this case, just when we're using YAMLs and these network security group rules are being created dynamically inside the network security group block, rather than a network security group rule block, which is a resource block recognized by Terraform, the resources won't show up as not being, within the configuration. It will just add them, so it will, or try and kill them off. If you add, like, for example, this outbound a resource name for this network security rule in the portal, and then you try to run the Terraform, it will try and delete it. So you would have to then create it inside this resource block here in the YAML, because it's not recognizing it as a new resource, it's just recognizing it as a new rule. So it won't say you can import it, it'll just recognize it as a rule that's not in the configuration, and it'll kill it off for you. So you just need to be careful about things like that, okay? And always just go by what your plan output says before you auto apply things. All right. If you were, folks, working in an organization, what I would say is you would probably have something like a drift tool set up where it would be ran on a schedule, possibly once a week, and it would run up to the plan and no further than that, and give you an indication of possible resources that are outside the Terraform configuration that have just been created by users during their ClickUps, tasks through the week, and it would keep things clean and prevent resources from being deleted. But things should be kept on top of that, so that happens to a minimal, because it would be a lot of work then to chase people and say, do you still need this, or are you going to import it? So just be wary of that, folks. But this is things that happen in the real world, and definitely this is something I see used a lot. You create the resource in the portal first, and then in your actual Terraform configuration, you create the block to actually mimic that resource, and then you've got it in your state file and manage it going forward via that means. Okay, so this other one as well, folks, I'll give you the example of it because it's nice to see a working example. So what I've got here is the network security group front end web prod, and I'm going to add an outbound rule to it in the portal first, and then run Terraform apply, and you will see what I mean with it getting destroyed. So front end web prod, we can see here that it's got 2 inbound custom rules. I'm going to add an outbound security rule, so click add here, and source, I'm going to stick an IP address on it. I'll just come back to the code. I will use the IP address that's here, copy that, back, stick that in here, paste, source port ranges, that was port 80, destination IP address, again 0.0.0.0 to the wider internet, service custom, I will stick that as HTTP, and it's already automated port 80 and TCP. This is deny rule. My name for it is deny HTTP, and it is rule number priority 210. Again, if you remember back to the priorities, folks, the lower the number, the higher the priority. So this is denying any outbound to port 80 to the wider internet. So I'll click add, and that's now in there as a deny rule, folks. Okay, so if we come back into our VS Code, okay, and we run Terraform plan, folks, in this case, because we don't want it to actually destroy it just yet. We just want to see what it's going to do. So then we can actually put this block in to save it from being destroyed, save our bit of manual work, folks, from being destroyed. What we can see here, folks, is the actual inbound rules are going to be destroyed first. It's going to kill all the rules off and then create all the rules again. So it is. So in this case here, it's going to kill the 2 inbound existing rules off, and this outbound rule that we just manually created is going to be killed off as well. So before we want to run this as an apply, we would copy these details, folks. Okay, you can see it's going to just recreate it again with the 2 existing inbounds without that outbound rule, because it isn't tracked. So we'd want to copy the details from this, and then we would want to come in and input it as another block, like this here. And in this case, I've already pre-made this one. I'll just uncomment it. And if I run this again, folks, this here should create that rule without actually destroying it. And here you go. it's showing, yes, it's destroying all the rules again, but this time it's actually creating them. It's just the behavior that Terraform does. So there you go, 2 inbounds and the outbound manually created one. If you look back in the portal then, folks, just refresh it, we can see that this deny rule still exists. Okay, so we've got 2 custom inbounds and 1 custom outbound rule. All right, so that's just another little nuance to know about as well, folks. All right, and like I said, there's more than one way to skin a cat doing this here, and if you do figure out any other ways of doing the import, folks, definitely share it in the comments, because it's a good thing to have in your arsenal. I see a lot of people use it, so I do, and it definitely speeds things up, especially for testing. When you're in the portal, just click option around and you can eliminate things that you don't want really quickly, doing it that way rather than having to code it all out here. And once you know it's working, then you just run your Terraform import blocks. What I would say is, really quickly, and I didn't demonstrate it here, was in the parent directory where these are ran, folks, in the module call, there's one here where if you did want to import it when it runs through these workflows, the GitHub Actions workflows, if you uncommented that out, folks, this will import the exact same resource, given obviously the name test in this case, where our network security group was called test. That's how it would be written. So it would import to and the ID of the network security group, folks. So as you can see there, module dot network security group, then we're jumping into the actual network security group resource block here. I'll just open this up slightly. After the dot here of the network security group _1, yep, then we're looking at Azure network security group is the next part, and then app _ network security group, and then in square brackets test with inverted commas, which is slightly different, folks, than when we ran it with the command line. We had to, put a / to exit those double quotes, okay, or otherwise it would have threw us an error. Plus we're keeping the / in this case, whereas on the command line we got rid of the /, folks. All right, and that test then was the name of the security group, folks, that we are working with there. All right, and that's 2 ways of doing it, folks. All right, there's only those ones that I know of, but like I said, if someone knows of any other different ones, please let me know. The one via the command line is the one that it shows us in the Terraform docs, which I'll share with you. This one here is in the Terraform documentation as well for import. There is a AWS example, so I'll share that one with you as well. All right, but as always, folks, I leave this one with you and wish you all the best. Take care and good luck.